Décris-toi en 3 mots.
Loud, spirited, dyke.
Penses-tu que la musique est politique?
Yes, I think that music has always been political, and the music that really resonates with people has some sort of message.
The song that kind of catapulted you to recognition was 1950. And well, there's multiple things about that song, but first it was based on a book, I believe. I wrote The Price of Salt, I think. So what instigated that song?
Well, it's also about a breakup, but it's so the same breakup. But it's I was reading a lot of gay literature, and there was one book, The Price of Salt, that really stuck with me because it's a beautiful story. And I think what I loved about it was it took place in the 50s, and the way that queer people were allowed to be public was so censored, and it was all about body language, and it was all about this kind of icy interaction because you had to hide yourself. And so I was, interested in the parallel between the metaphor of 1950 being how queer love looks in public, and how it's very similar to like having a really cold relationship or really distant.
Right.
So I love that visual, like playing 1950 being, a metaphor for having someone be icy towards you. Yeah, it's like, I think I read a lot of gay books in high school, but that was the one that I feel like I connected to the most because it for me at least, I read that book and I'm like, it was written in 1952, but it has maybe one of the most honest representations of queer love, or just love in general, of any book I've read. So I really love the concept of how queer love would exist in public spaces, but really be a private occurrence. You know what I mean? Like, people would be gay, but they would hide it in public, and then you would have to kind of like, fuck your girlfriend or make out with your girlfriend in private. And I think that I connected to that because it's not a concept that's lost now. People hide themselves and feel uncomfortable in public spaces because they're gay, and I think it's a universal concept that queer people feel that there's always these encounters that feel like they're affected by the environment of our world, and politics. So I was really taken aback by that book. I was just like, holy shit, like I remember reading it in high school, and I didn't go to school for like 5 days. I was like, I'm taking some personal days. It's very emotional. I actually have not read that James Baldwin. It's like there are those texts that like exist in our history but aren't taught in schools.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's up to queer kids to go find those books.
Oh, okay,
because
okay.
you're not. I mean, I don't know what it's like in France, but in the U.S. we're not reading gay books. They're not giving us gay texts to read.
Yeah, okay.
They're just like, fuck you, please read like fucking J.D. Salinger and like pretend you're a white dude. I'm just like, I'm not.
One thing that I found interesting about it was, I don't know why, but it kind of, I don't know the right word, but it conjured up this idea of identity or it's difficult. I had to think for some reason about the Harlem Renaissance.
Yeah.
Because I thought, well, that was a period of time where certain art was really prominent.
Right.
For a certain group of people.
Right,
and
art was really prominent, but at
Exactly.
the same time it was a culture of oppression.
Right.
And I think that's what's interesting about disenfranchised or oppressed communities is that we thrive when there is something against us because we're used to fighting our way out of oppression. I think gay people, the gay art that I find really beautiful comes out of a period of sadness. It's like I'm very invested in drag culture and the ballroom scene, and that was a direct result of the AIDS epidemic and people finding happiness and solace within their communities during a time period that was so dark. The 50s is another one. It's like gay people were making art. There was a lot of art. There was the Beat Poets. There was Patricia Highsmith writing The Price of Salt. And yet it was so savage. It was so evil towards gay people,
Right.
Harlem Renaissance is a very similar thing. I think, the queer community is really, really good at taking it with a smile and moving past hard times and figuring out a way to find happiness and in sadness. I've always found kind of a comfort in using religious imagery to get across my point. I hope that it helps out kids who are feeling, disenfranchised within their communities, whether they're religious or queer or whatever. I think there's definitely a commonality in those two themes. There's something beautiful about that, making gayness holy instead of falling into the trap of feeling like gayness can't be a religious experience in itself. Because it really is, it definitely is a religious experience to like be gay. It's sexy. Well, that's what's so lovely is I think we're taking the first steps into, getting past just like the initial like these are queer artists and these are just like really talented people. Yeah. And I think that we're not there yet, so there's still like a level of you have to be like, no, I am gay and this is like what I'm writing about, because we're not like at a level where you can just write about your gay shit and have people, connect to it on music alone.
But could it be so simple to be like, yo, that's a talented people?
I mean, we're getting there. I think that it's going to take a couple more years to get there, but it's really iconic that it started. I get asked shit like, was it a choice to gender your music? And I'm like, well, no, straight people don't think about that shit. Putting out terrible fucking music all the time, gendered to the gods. When I started writing songs about ladies, I was just like, this is hot. Like, hot is universal. Sexy is universal. Yes, it don't fucking matter.
Personal, but was there a turning point for you, where you got this realization? Where I'm not gonna.
I was so young. I just knew the minute I started writing songs with like female pronouns. I was just like, this is. I didn't even think about it at first. I was like, this is just how I write, and then I realized that it was not only essential for my well-being, but it was also essential for the kids listening to me. Like, this is what they need. This is what we need as a community. We need people who make good music and are proud of themselves. You know what I mean? And one does not compromise the other. Like, there has to be a full package. We're tired of sacrificing representation for good art and vice versa.
Right.
In
terms of the political situation in America, is it that you say it's, you do it with a smile, but I can imagine that can be quite tough.
It's very tough. I think that, obviously I have an easier life than most of the queer people in America. I grew up in New York and I live in LA. I don't experience what it's like to be gay in a city that doesn't accept me, a city that voted against me. Like, I could have been from a city that voted entirely against gay marriage, but I wasn't, know? And I think that it's very challenging. But the best thing that we can do is to keep making our art, because it truly has more of a power than anyone in our office. Like, queer art has an ability to infiltrate the minds and the thoughts of a generation of people, and who doesn't have that power? Fucking Donald Trump. Like, Donald Trump does not have any power. Right. This fucker is like, oh God, he's such a dick. But it's like, he really, honestly, that the hate, it just doesn't, it isn't as motivating. You know what I mean? Like, we've seen it historically. It's like there's these fucked up assholes who are running our country, but they never seem to last. Because there's so much going against him right now. There's all these gay people, there's all these black people, there's all these trans people, and we're all fighting against him. And I have a lot of hope. You have to have hope. You can't just be sad. It's like, you have to have hope.
Fair enough, it makes sense.
You can't just dwell in the sadness. That's not what we're about.
And you clearly have all of these people who are looking for some inspiration, so that's nice, right? Right?
They just want some gays. It's about time.
Representation.
But now it's time. It's time for some gay folk to be loud. Like, straight people are so fucking loud. Like, I'm like, they're so loud about being straight all the time. I'm like, we can be too. We can just as loud. Gays are louder.
It's interesting because, well, I mentioned the word representation earlier, and then I imagine Because I can't remember who it was. I think it was Anna Calvi who I was talking to, and she said when she was growing up, there were almost no artists that represented kind of where she came from, her view. So for you, is that important to kind of show that in your art that is a part of life as well?
It has to be, because when you don't see people who look like you, it's hard to, there's nothing to grasp onto. And I felt that same way. It's like I was so inundated with straight representation, straight relationships, straight love, straight musicians.
Right.
And it was hard for me as a young gay kid to even conceptualize that there could be a gay pop star, because I didn't have anybody who looked like me. And so now it's essential for me to be unapologetic about who I am, because it's how people who aren't oppressed interact with the world constantly, right? And it's not fair for straight people to be able to do all this shit, and gay people, it's just not fair. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, I don't ever want to hide a part of myself. It is a gay crowd on stage. Like, it is really, truly, like, it is a gay safe zone in those shows. And I don't know if I ever anticipated somehow that would be the case, but it is. Like, it's really, and it's beautiful, like, to see gay kids who are like, fuck, like, we didn't have anybody before this, and it feels really great. And I hope that I provide not only representation, but somebody who, like, I'm, you know, a real-ass person who, like, you know, is new to this, and I'm, like, fumbling my way through it and figuring out what works and what doesn't. And it's such a warm atmosphere to walk into. The moment that we're seeing is people are hungry for authenticity, and gay people are having a renaissance in the sense that we fall into a category of people who have always been authentic but don't have the same type of platform as straight people. So now there's a lane, and I hope that more and more people take that lane and run with it. It's not trendy to be gay, it's just everyone has been gay. Had been gay for so long, and now people are just like getting hyped to it. And that makes me super happy. Like, it makes me so happy that people are exploring their art and their queerness, and I do think I'm part of, like, a moment, but I think you know, good music is universal and it's forever, gay or straight. You know, you look at Queen, you look at George Michael, you look at Tina Turner, DL gay, and you see, you know, it's always been gay. It's always been fucking gay. It's just now it's, you know, now you can say it. Now you can say you're gay. You don't have to just look gay. You can also say you're gay, which is dope. I love that.